Hi, I'm Father Joe. Part of my job is I'm a chaplain for a Catholic high school. Last year, one of our boys got in a bit of trouble, and the principal asked me to talk to him. And I'll never forget what happened. I kind of took him out for a walk, so we're walking along, and I'm trying to reason with him about some of the bad decisions he made that day, when finally he stopped me. He literally put his hand on my shoulder and looked me in the eye, just about crying. And he said one of the greatest lines I've ever heard. He says, "Father, you're acting like I thought about it." How often is that the case for each of us? Thank God Jesus understands. Let's go to this week's question. Right. We got a few questions this week. All right, first one. Dear Father Joe, a friend of mine says that Jesus never talked about sex, that all the rules and regulations we have are man-made. I've asked around, and a lot of people say the same thing. What do you think? You know, I try not to think. It's not one of my gifts. But seriously, I know a lot of people say that about Jesus, that Jesus never talked about sex, but I'm not sure where that information's coming from. In fact, if we look, some of Jesus' harshest words were about sexuality. For example, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 27, Jesus says that just looking at someone lustfully is as serious as adultery. Now, that's pretty tough if you ask me. In terms of man-made rules, we have to remember that in a certain sense, all rules are man-made. The question isn't who made them, it's what inspired those who made them. We as a church believe that God gave us leadership in the church and that the Holy Spirit speaks through that leadership. Now, remembering that our bodies are sacred, then perhaps it makes a little more sense to us to see why there's these rules about sexuality. Remember, God created each of us, male and female, in God's own image. That means we are sacred. So we need to treat everything sacred with care and reverence. Following the rules about sexuality helps us to do that when it comes to our bodies. Let's go to the next question. Dear Father Joe, how far can two people go before it's a sin? Now, I'm assuming here that you're talking about physically. How far can two people go physically? And I assume you're talking about outside the context of marriage. Well, to be honest, the simple answer, we should never put ourselves in such a position where we have to ask that question. It's not about how far you can go. It's about your partner's dignity. It's about the fact that Christ lives within them, and so we treat them with care and reverence and respect. It's about the level of commitment that you have in that relationship. Sexual activity belongs in marriage. It's an act of total commitment and mutual support. Let's look at the last question for today. Dear Father Joe, how do I know if I'm in love? My parents say I'm too young to think about marrying my high school boyfriend, but we are in love. I just know that this is meant to be. You know, love is a beautiful thing, and it's powerful that you're experiencing that at this point in your life. But I want to give you a real simple principle here. As a general rule, your parents know what they're talking about. I know, it's hard to believe, but it will become clearer to you as you get older that the more we live our lives and the longer we've lived our lives, in a sense, the more wisdom we accumulate. And being able to share that with others is an important thing. Now, the second thing I want you to think about is how your definition of love has changed over time. So, when we were little, what defined love, and all the way up till now, it's important that you see how your definition of love has changed over time. Now, from your letter, I'm assuming you're still in high school. And if that's the case, think of how much your definition of love can change. Now, that doesn't mean the love we had in the past was false, but it means it was the love of a child and that it needs to grow. It doesn't mean that your previous ideas of love have been wrong. Well, I guess with that in mind, the question might be, how do I know when I'm in love? One day, you'll look across a crowded room and you'll know. I'm just kidding, all right? You'll know you're in love when you're more concerned about the other people's needs and wants than your own. You'll know you're in love when, in a sense, the relationship isn't defined by what you can get, but by how much you can give. These are all clues that you're in love. I encourage you, listen to your parents. They have wisdom on these things. Love and sacrifice are intertwined, and too often we separate them. Love prompts us to do noble things, to be better people. When you sense these things in yourself in relation to another person, you know it's really love. Enjoy another day in God's presence.